All right, here we are. Another episode of the Roadies and Rescues interview program. We're going from Sacramento to Portland today. We got 13 rescue dogs in the van here in the Chevy Express. And I'm joined by my friend Eli. Eli, I will allow you to introduce yourself.
How's it going? I'm Eli, and I'm a roadie for the band Skating Polly, and I'm excited to be here.
Cool, it's great to have you. We've been trying to make this work for several months now, trying to get schedules to line up and whatnot, so cool to have you here.
Yeah.
And you get to see this whole wacky operation and say all the bits and pieces and kind of nuances of stuff that you can't really tell or convey through, like, social media stuff, just like how the logistics all work and how stuff actually gets done.
All the smells. You don't get the smells.
Yeah. Even after the van's been disinfected, there are still just there's always certain odors that just seem to linger. But yeah, well, thankfully we made it out of Sacramento. We got the dogs loaded without either one of us getting pottied on, which is
no
good.
No potty. Still got all my fingers.
Yeah, nobody got bit or anything like that. Yeah, so we're that's a good way. Definitely a good way to start a long day. It's probably not going to get to the hotel till, I don't know, 11:30ish or something like that tonight. But yeah, so here to talk about stuff about the concert industry and touring business and whatnot. And so tell me, tell the viewers what exactly what some of your job titles are. I know you wear a few hats with Skating Polly, and what those different hats and job description entails.
Sure, yeah. So when I first started with Skating Polly about maybe a little less than 3 years ago, they just need someone to help drive the van, someone to sell the merch at the shows, and, someone to help do the heavy lifting. And I was happy to start all of that with them. And but over the years, we've just grown closer and more trusting, and I'm starting to get awarded a few more roles. I'm getting a promotion. So I'm now transitioning from a roadie into their North American tour manager, and just starting that transition, just starting to take on more responsibilities for them. So I'm really excited to do that. I've loved being on the road with them, and so the more I can do with them, I'm just all stoked on. So those new responsibilities that I'm taking on, I'm going to be as a tour. The difference between a tour manager and a roadie for a band like Skating Polly is not much, because we're a smaller operation. We are they're self-managed, but and we play unless we're opening for a big act, which Kate Nash, X are some bands that they've opened for. They got a tour coming up with Girl in a Coma, so those are some big rooms. But most of the time with them, we're playing like 200, 300 cap rooms, and so I guess, as a tour manager, I'm just kind of I'm making sure we got a hotel room every night. I'm making sure we get to the venue on time every day. I'm emailing the venue ahead of time to make sure everyone knows when we're coming, where to park, all the little things that kind of make a show run. I'm just there to help make sure they happen for the band.
Do you also handle the contract settlement at the end of the night? Picking up the check, the payment, and all that stuff?
That's right. That's the one that you can't forget, and I did just forget. But it's getting the money at the end of the night. That's a big one too.
Well, the good thing is at least they have a pro booking agent.
Yes.
And so
absolutely.
So it's if you forget to pick up the money at the end of the night, and you have a pro booking agent, no one's just going to be like, oh, hey, we don't know what happened to it.
Right.
Like, they're not going to burn that bridge with the booking agent. Like, they'll say, oh, hey, you guys forgot to grab the settlement check at the end of the night, and like, I'll mail it to the booking agent.
Yep.
You know, so
that is a huge help. That's a huge safety net. We try to avoid that, but
it happens all the time.
Things
it happens
happen
all the time at Bottom of the Hill. Like,
Yeah.
it's a, you know, again, like when van and trailer tours, bands that are playing 200, 300 cap rooms, like, you put in really long days, and it's hectic, and it's easy to forget stuff like that. And also too, when you're in the transitionary period where you've been more of like a generalized sort of like quote off, as we were so rudely interrupted by a funky memory card or something. Hopefully this is not going to turn out to be the shortest ever Roadies and Rescues interview. But yeah, and hopefully what happened on those cards is still part of what we can edit in later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were talking about like the tour managing responsibilities and stuff, and we were joking about the occasionally forgetting to pick up the payment at the end of a super hectic day.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, we're you know, sometimes we open for really cool big bands, and we love doing. Maybe I didn't close my door good enough either.
Mine was I could tell mine was a little bit noisy. You want to pull over, or you're okay? Here we go. I think you're fine. Yeah.
All right. Back to it.
Yeah, you're talking about touring with bigger bands.
Yeah, so that's really fun. But and then we love doing our headlining tours and bringing small support bands along with us too. And you know, every now and then we forget a check, but these smaller bands, sometimes it's their first tour ever. So a big part of my responsibility too is kind of being the unofficial tour manager of the opening band too, which is, you know, making sure they are learning everything properly. And I mean, the amount of checks I've had to pick up for opening bands is that's a lot too.
Yeah,
that's
like,
pretty
we get
often.
paid?
Yeah, right. They're just so stoked to be on there. They forget that there's some stuff to do after the show, which is fair. But that's how it goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the days are incredibly long and hectic, and that's what you know, people I think focus on, like what they perceive as might be the glamorous side of being in a band and touring, or working on the crew touring with a band or whatever, and they don't realize it's like there's days where you drive for 9 hours from Denver to Kansas City, and then when you get there, you still have to put on an entire show.
Yes, absolutely. And then sometimes you're even driving after the show too.
Yeah.
Get closer to the next city.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you're in a major metropolitan area, like you want to get out of the city so you're not stuck in rush hour traffic in the morning. It's like you're better off getting an hour outside of the Bay Area or whatever.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. So, and how did you originally get connected with touring with Skating Polly? Like when you first kind of came in and you were more, when you were sort of less specialized as a tour manager and you were more generalized as kind of like a catch-all roadie who was doing a bit of everything. How'd you end up landing in that slot?
Yeah, so my whole start with music and bands, I had a good friend in high school who, he was the first person I'd met who wanted, he knew that music was going to be his life. He knew that is what he was going to do, and I had never, you know, other than playing tuba in middle school, I was not very musically inclined myself. But just by hanging out with him, that's when I learned how to pick up a guitar, and I knew if I was going to hang out with him more, that I would have to start learning how to play, because that's all he wanted to do. And eventually we just started playing together. We'd go to open mics and play songs. He started writing some really great originals. Fast forward 6 years later, we have a band formed in LA, and we started playing some shows around town. And then that's when we met Kelly from Skating Polly. We met her at a show. Oh, I'm trying to remember the venue. It's in East Hollywood. It starts with a V, I think. Oh man, this is killing me that I can't remember the name of that venue. Anyway, we met at a venue in East Hollywood, and we stayed in touch. And Kelly asked our band, The Wash, if we wanted to open for them for 3 shows on the West Coast, Tacoma, Eugene, and San Francisco. And at the time, I was kind of barely in the band. I was doing some other stuff. They were really tight. They were really tight as a 3-piece, but they had me come in for a few songs to add backup guitar layers and stuff. So I joined them for this tour, mostly as a roadie, but I would play about 1 song with them a night. And from the drive to Eugene to San Francisco, Skating Polly asked, just for fun, if anyone wanted to ride with them in their van, and kind of just switch up the people so we could all get mingled. And and the photographer ended up riding with Skating Polly, and we just had the greatest drive from Eugene to San Francisco together. And there was also a romantic relationship forming between me and Kelly. And by the end of the San Francisco show, me and Kelly were quite infatuated with each other. And it wasn't very long after that they asked me if they wanted to roadie with them for their longer West Coast tour. And I had nothing going on. I had just quit my last job, so it was a perfect time to jump on the road with them. And I've been on the road with them for 3 years ever since. Just was hooked on after my first tour. Totally hooked.
And they're a hardworking band, which is one of the things I love about them, and it's one of the things that always impressed me about them, is they tour a lot.
Yes.
And they're very hands-on, very in charge of everything that they're doing, and they tour a lot.
Yeah, I think the average is 130 days on the road. That's kind of what we hit every year. So about a third of the year we're on the road. So it's extremely hardworking. I mean, yeah, extremely hardworking. And they've been doing it for a long time. Kelly and Peyton started the band when Kelly was 9 and Peyton was 14. And they started touring when Kelly was 12 and Peyton was 17. And they've been doing shows ever since they started. And so it's been 16 years of the band and 13 years of working really hard on the road doing those shows. And it's awesome. I mean, it's a whole, it feels like there's kind of 2 sides to us. There's the on the road side of us, and then there's the at home side. But I mean, it's about a 50-50 split on who we are that given day. It's and they're just and like they said, they're totally independent. So they just run it themselves. They're professional and fun, and we have a blast.
Yeah, that's cool. And then we were talking earlier off camera about just some of your own background, your history and stuff, and because as you're mentioning about the amount of time you spend on the road and versus the time you spend at home, and what are you normally doing when you're home now? Because you've also, we should also dive into too like what you went to college for.
Yeah.
And what you studied, because you were mentioning earlier off camera about trying to balance other things that you're super passionate about, but how it's a really tricky thing to stay kind of in the loop and stay up to speed in the world of environmental sciences and that kind of stuff when you're spending your time touring with a band, you know?
Yeah, that's right. My dad's a college professor, my mom's a middle school teacher, and I grew up in Irvine, California, which is an extremely academic environment. So it was an academic household in an academic city, so going to college wasn't even a question. But ever since I was young, I've loved the environment, and specifically I've loved fish. So I graduated UC Davis with an environmental science and management degree. The whole time there I was working in fish labs, and I was doing field research on different fish. Even after that, I did a 1-year master's in Brighton, England, actually. And that was for more of the policy side. I was doing a lot of science in undergrad, but I went for a policy degree for my master's, and came home after that, and my first job was working on commercial fishing boats in the Northeast Atlantic, and I was I did 30 days at sea on 9 different boats, and I tried about every medication they've invented, and nothing fixed my seasickness issue.
No Dramamine was strong enough.
No Dramamine was strong enough. And commercial fishing is a crazy, that's a crazy lifestyle, being out on those boats, and it's kind of prepped me for the roadie life ahead of me, because I was driving all the way from Portland, Maine down to Newport News, Virginia, going on different boats, and you really got to learn how to go with the flow on a commercial fishing boat, because the captain's in charge and everything can flip on a dime when you're out there fishing. So you got to learn how to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, and you got to learn how to just take it as it comes, which are skills that really help you on the road as well, because this could be a 3-hour long episode talking about all the different obstacles that you aren't prepared for when you're living a life on the road with a band. So that was very cool. And then I came back to California after that, and I worked for a fisheries science company based out of West Sacramento, and I did some studies on the American River for steelhead and salmon, and I was supposed to do a job in Piru Creek in Ventura County, but right before I started that job, we had some record rainfall in California. This was back in like 2002 or 2003, I think. But the road I would have to take to my job site up in the mountains was supposedly covered by 40 landslides. So I was never able to make it to my job site. So I had to, they said they had work for me, but that work was looking at images of soil and clicking different pieces of soil that were over a certain size, or clicking rocks and writing them down. And it just, that job wasn't quite for me. Sitting behind a computer and looking at rocks was not quite what I signed up for. So I quit that job, and that was just the time when I went on tour with the Wash and met Skating Polly, and then right after that just was super easy to transition to being a roadie with them. But yeah, like you said, trying to balance fisheries, which is my first love, with my new love, which is being on the road with bands. Sometimes I wish I could be as involved in both of them as possible, but it's pretty hard. That being said, being on the road and seeing the world and just seeing different rivers and different lakes and meeting all of these people that have a connection to the water and to the land, I mean, it's incredible the amount of different people that you meet on the road and what they know about their environment. And as much as I wish I was more involved with it, it's a really invaluable um, um, resource is just meeting people all across the country who know something that I didn't know and are offering me connections and resources and information about things that are happening on the other, in other parts of the country that I was not familiar with and stuff. So even though it feels like I took a step away from fisheries, I'm still every day being on the road, learning more about it and gaining resources along the way. So
Yeah, it still keeps you on the peripheral at least because you're moving around. It's not like you just stopped and you like took a retail job somewhere or like you're like working in a warehouse or something.
absolutely, and the field of environmental management and science is incomplete without well, it's a very interconnected field. Everything affects something else and is connected to something else, and you can always learn something from one area and apply it to a different area that people haven't been thinking about. So I feel like I'm building that type of skill and knowledge, which I hope when I can get into a position where I can balance both of these things better, I know that knowledge and skills will come back in hand. So I'm looking forward to it, and just looking forward to learning more along the way too.
Yeah, well, it's super valuable to be able to learn or to be able to have the kind of insight of where certain things that might seem like they're really disparate worlds, but you can like line them up in a way and go, oh, I can see a way, it's really valuable to be able to say, these two things look completely different, but I can see a way that there's an overlap here.
Absolutely.
Like the thing that you said about working on commercial fishing boats would not seem at all analogous to touring with bands. And in a lot of ways, it's not like a perfect analog, but it's more like on a much more basic fundamental level, it just prepares you for wildly unexpected, crazy hardships and difficulties
100%.
that you have to get through. Like you
100%.
don't have any choice. You have to get through it. And because it's not like you can just like pick up and just go home at the end of the day at 5 o'clock.
I'm not that good of a swimmer.
Yeah, so yeah, it is important. I mean, I think that's cool too, because it's a interesting way of looking at things, because it's one of the things that I've had to explain to people many times over the last 5 years or so about how and why I started Roadies and Rescues. And it's something where when people say, well, I don't understand, like you're a sound engineer and you used to tour with bands as a crew guy, as a sound engineer and stuff, and like, how does that translate to the world of dog rescue? And then it's like, well, it doesn't seem like at first it would overlap, but then when you realize that there's this underground world of Facebook networkers who help get dogs relocated from overcrowded shelters where they're going to be put to sleep.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's just a matter of like someone who's 10 hours away in Oregon or Washington says, oh, we have space at our rescue group. We can take overflow from California, but we have to get them here. And so for me to say, okay, well, I'm going to get in a van and drive for 13 hours to take these, 12 dogs or whatever up to Portland or something is, it's like, well, I used to do that and put on a show on the same day.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's like, yeah, I think it's super valuable and important to be able to have this sort of mindset where you can pick out the pieces of things that you can then later find a way to translate that into another world.
Yep.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the fishing boat thing is very, very interesting. And then, as you go too, like, you're like, as you sort of like move up in the like the levels of complexity of like, you know, like you said, like there's a difference between touring and headlining and doing your own shows in like 200 or 300 cap venues.
Yeah.
Whereas they go out, you know, every couple of years they go out and they'll support a band like X, and now they're playing like 600 to 1,000 cap venues, and they're the support band, and it's like a whole different thing where your skill set and what you're doing as a tour manager or as a front house engineer or whatever, but for you, in your case, as a tour manager, what you're doing becomes more and more narrow and actually becomes more, you know, refined. And, you know, like a lot of us start out generally as the quote unquote the roadie, like the one crew person that the band can afford to bring on the road, and you're dabbling in a little bit of everything, and then eventually you find out from your own strengths and weaknesses, like, hey, I think it'd be better if I channeled more of my effort here. And then if the band is playing bigger venues and doing better financially, then they can afford to bring in someone who's just doing merch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and like, because like you could even talk about that. Like that's like just doing merch, especially if you're on a bigger tour. Like a lot of people, you know, like if we assume that whoever's listening to this video doesn't know anything about how the concert world works, like if you're playing in that 1,000 cap room when you're opening for X or somebody else like that, like you have to do like the whole count in and count out process because the venue takes a cut of the merchandise sales.
Yep.
So there's like, that's like a whole process unto itself where it's not like you just get to the venue, you hang up the t-shirts. You have to count in and fill out an inventory sheet of exactly how many you brought into the venue of every size and every style and every design of hats and stickers and buttons and shirts and hoodies and all that stuff. And at the end of the night, you have to count it all out with a person from the venue, like usually looking over your shoulder.
Yep.
And, you know, because they're going to take a cut of whatever those sales happen to be. And so, so it's like just once you become like a full-time merch person, it is a full-time job unto itself.
Absolutely. And those bands, you know, it's much more than your typical what you see for some of like the opening bands on our Skating Poly headline tours, where it's like a t-shirt and a CD and that's what they got. It's like they got maybe 6 boxes of like one type of t-shirt and then like 6 boxes, or they come in with like just way more stuff. You got to sit back. It takes them about 2 hours to set up everything, and then you can go fill in your spot. It's much different than our headline shows where you get there, got a box or two of some stuff, lay it out, and you're good to go. You go do something else.
You've already run out of all the smalls and medium shirts, and all you've got left is, you know, you're just like, it's like a very limited selection of like, hey guys, here's what you get until we get fulfillment, like ships to us at another venue further into the tour or whatever. It's like a smaller scale. Well, and a lot of times too with the tour managing stuff, it's like, you know, what ends up happening is, you know, when you're tour managing a band like Skating Poly, there's, you know, your tour managing responsibilities change from when they're doing a headlining tour, because like you're booking everything like the hotels, and you have to do all the advancing, all the contracts, and making sure that they have your hospitality right, or that they know what stuff you need to have provided in the dressing rooms, and you have to gather all the info of like, what time do we arrive at the venue? What time does our sound check happen? What time can we leave the venue to go eat dinner and then come back and play the show? And what time does the opener go on and the middle band and blah, blah, blah. But then when you're like touring like on a bus tour, you know, that's like a whole other thing, because you spend half of the tour just dealing with getting to the bus driver to their hotel rooms every night and getting them a cab there and a cab back, and then like having to work out like the overdrives because they can only drive so many miles per day, and figure, it's like, and like, when you get to that where you're on a bus tour, tour managing half of your week just is just dealing with bus drivers specifically, you know, because it's like, it's such a added layer of such complexity that there's a lot of levels to it. But so you've been on the side of like, you know, you've played music and you've been in bands and stuff. Yeah. But do you just feel like you said, you're, you know, like your best friend who, you know, was so driven that they want to only do music and everything, and so like to even hang out with that person, you're kind of like, oh, I should like learn to play music because it gives me a way to hang out with this person that I like and everything. But if you're when you at some point when you realize you're not that driven, like you know music from the inside, but you're not necessarily as driven to make your living on that creative side of it. You know, like your comfort level with being like, well, this is still rad. Like I'm still getting to do cool shit. I'm like traveling the world and I'm doing this and like going to big festivals and doing all this stuff. But like you don't like, because for some people, I think that now there are a lot of people who they are musicians themselves. They have their own bands, but they might be like a drum tech for a bigger band or something.
Yeah.
And that allows them to still be a drummer, let's say, and do their thing and they love it. And then they can also make enough money on that professional side of being a backline tech that they wouldn't make because their band isn't big enough to make that kind of money on the road. So they can split their time, but they're still always in their creative element.
Yep.
Whereas you're not necessarily in the artistic side of it, but you're still touring and getting to do all this stuff. But it's fair to say that you're like, okay, I'm totally cool with this. And like, you don't necessarily have the itch to be on stage.
No, not at all. Yes, correct. My favorite part is just going to new places I've never been before. And I don't need to be on stage to take that in. In fact, not knowing that I don't have to get up on stage every night really lets me enjoy my environments a little bit more. That's how I feel. So and then I meet so many people in bands, and it's clear that there's a difference between how much they love doing what they do, being on the creative side, being up on stage, and how much I love being around it. So it works out for me. It works perfectly for me.
Well, and it's good because through specialization of labor, you're able to take off the work that they aren't passionate about.
Yeah.
They don't want to be like going over the contract at the end of the night and going over all the numbers of the settlement of how many tickets were sold and here's our cut of the money and blah, 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 blah. Like that's the last thing that most people in bands want to deal with. Counting in and out the merch and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Like they want to, it's like, by us crew people who've done that side of things, like it's, we do this specialized portion of things so that they don't have to think about it.
Yeah. And it's actually been like a hard part for me being with Skating Poly because they're so capable, professional, smart, and experienced in all of those things that it's like I feel like I have a lot to work up to be as good as them, but they just don't want to do it anymore. They can do it, they're so good at it, but they just want someone who can take that responsibility over for them so that they can focus on what they're actually there to do, which is be up on stage and play music every night. And so that's, right now, they're better at doing my job than I am, but they just value so much that someone else is doing it for them.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I'm happy to be doing it, and hopefully I'll be getting better along the way, and hopefully my goal is that one day they'll forget how to do all of this stuff that they used to know how to do, and they'll need me all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good goal to have it so that those roles can reverse and they can just kind of forget some of that stuff, and it's not. It doesn't have to be part of their skill set anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes it's tough too. Like sometimes, you can be hired to do a certain job and you can go out on the road with a band and, they'll say, oh, here's your job description, whatever. But sometimes they're just so conditioned to do things a certain way that it's hard to get them to sort of relinquish the reins of that sometimes. Boy, someone's really pitching a fit back there. Some dog is very, very upset. They might need a potty walk at this next break.
Let's do it.
I got to figure out who that is. We're going to be stopping at a pilot truck stop in about 20 minutes, and we'll see if we can get a couple of them
Get
potty
some
walked.
relief going in the back.
Yeah. A bunch of the little ones are probably fine because they're going to Medford and they're going to be getting off in the next like hour and a half or whatever. And we have one dog getting off in Wairika, and we can also like maybe potty break some dogs there. But it's, you know, it's those last couple dogs that are going all the way up to like Tangent and all the way up to Portland that, you know, if they start crying, then we know that they need to. They're like, oh man, they got another 7 hours or whatever to wait. So try and give them a little bit of relief, comfort.
If you don't mind, I'd also like to talk more about something we were talking about before, which is the, you know, my interest in fisheries and how I feel like that plays out on the road with bands. And I just think a really fantastic part about it is that I don't feel like I have to put that away and really only focus on being on the road, because everyone I've met on the road that I talk to about this stuff, no one's ever been like, what are you doing on the road? You're a fish guy. You should be doing fish. They're always extremely interested, and they want to know more about what I do as I'm thoroughly in the world that they're in, learning what they're doing. So there's just this great feedback where you're introducing people who've been in bands or on the road their whole life to something that they have no idea, and they always meet me with just such enthusiasm and interest, and I still get text all the time from people I've met before who learned something about fisheries and wanted to text me, or learned about a fish or a conservation organization and sending me the information for it. So I think it's just really fantastic how much positive feedback there is, the positive feedback loop rather, of their interest. They're getting me interested and hyped up on their world, and I'm getting them interested and hyped up in my world. And I mean, that's kind of what Roadies and Rescues is about too, is getting music industry people hyped on dog rescuing, and getting dog people kind of hyped up on the music industry. So
yeah,
I've really found, I've really found that the music world is a very connected. Just people want to know about everything in the music world, not just about music, because they're fascinated by the world and they're fascinated about what happens in it. And so far, I've never been around a group of people that want to know so much about something that seemingly doesn't affect them at all. And that's music people. That's who they are. That's a beautiful thing about them.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people wouldn't understand from an outside perspective is you would think, well, because there are definitely times where people in the music industry, whether it's the performers or whether it's the crew people, there are definitely times where you can find yourself insulated and really in a certain kind of bubble, and it just becomes its own very insular, tiny little world or whatever.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think a lot of people find that really suffocating and boring.
Yeah,
and I think that when someone comes along and they have like an outside, not just an outside interest, but they actually have like some degree of expertise, like you went to school and you studied all of this stuff, and it's
right.
like a part of your life in a very big way. And then when you talk about it, you are clearly like animated and passionate about it.
Yeah.
So it's immediately going to be intriguing to people, even though it's like very removed from where they are, on that day in that venue, in their bubble of the music world. it's definitely a great way for them to sort of get out of it for a while.
Sure.
And sort of clue into the rest of the world. And then the beauty of that too is that the more that you get to talk about that stuff and teach about that stuff to other people, you know, it's like teaching is how you really learn stuff. You know, like that's how like it's because it like when someone's like, oh, I don't know anything about that, explain it to me from the ground up. You might like already have it all memorized and know it a certain way, but when you have to like bring someone else up to speed, it forces you to reorganize your thinking in such a way that like after you teach it to someone else, you come away with a better and more concise understanding of it. So by virtue of people being intrigued and wanting to know what you want about the thing you know, it really keeps you from forgetting. It keeps you from like, it doesn't just like start to slowly evaporate. Like you're not in that world, but you're kind of in that world because it's definitely interesting and it's definitely something people are going to want to know about, you know. It totally makes sense, but it's not something I think would be obvious to people outside that they would be like, yeah, a lot of people who do this for a living, like it's actually kind of boring at a lot of points. Yeah. And you actually want to like, oh, here's something totally new to learn about. That's actually cool. But yeah, it's cool. That's great. I mean, it's awesome. I think that you can be in the touring world and have like a wildly different outside interest. That's, you know, that's something that like ultimately it sounds like that, you know, like as we all get older and have different responsibilities and everything else, it's and like your positions in life change and stuff. It's like there might come a point where, okay, touring with bands is not really as viable as it once was,
sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you already have something that like if you were going to shift gears, like I'm really thinking like now that Bottom of the Hill's closing, like I've never been passionate enough. Like I've worked in other venues. There's some other places that I really, really genuinely like in the North Bay and I like mixing there and stuff, but I'll never have the passion again for what I've put into nearly 20 years at Bottom of the Hill.
Yeah.
There's never going to be another venue like it ever again. I was in the right place at the right time to slot in and find my role there and be an important part of something like really epic and great that other people built before me, and then I was able to walk in and bring my own contribution and do my own thing, and it required me to be super passionate about it and really love it and everything. And I just don't, as much as there's other places that I really, really like, and I'll pick up shifts there, I don't think I'm ever really going to be a venue guy again. And because of Roadies and Rescues, I can't really see myself getting back on touring as a front of house engineer, even though there's plenty of demand and there's stuff that I'm certainly qualified to do. And I do miss it. Like I've been off the road since 2012. I've been off the road for almost 15 years. And like, part of me would love to get back out and be mixing big concerts and be on big tours again, doing front of house and stuff. But like, if I wasn't doing these trips twice a month, you know, and saving 400, 500, 600 dogs and cats per year, like, then I wouldn't truly be happy. I wouldn't be fulfilled. So I don't know what I'm going to do like a year from now. I have no idea what, like, if, you know, once Bottom of the Hill, once they retire and they close it down for good, like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just might be done with sound. I might just be done with sound, and maybe Roadies and Rescues is just like, maybe at that point I've been able to turn this into something. I mean, right now it's all volunteer. It's like there's no money, there's no pay or anything. I could barely get enough donations to cover the expenses every month. But it's cool, you know, that you did you finish your like a degree through UC Davis?
Yep. Yeah. When the pandemic hit, I just had one more semester to go, and it just everything transitioned to online. So I just went back home and finished all my courses online and got my degree. So that is in my pocket.
And that's like a bachelor's science type?
Bachelor's of science. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Environmental sciences.
Science and management. Yep. Yeah.
So like, what if you eventually were to transition into something like that? Like, where do you end up like with something like that? Like, do you go back into like the research end of it, like at universities or something, or do you go like work for Fish and Game and like you're actually out in the field and like I'm sure there's like so many different specialized ways that you could utilize that kind of degree that I wouldn't even begin to imagine like what the jobs are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. There are a lot of different ways it's applied. I think I really love being in the field. And doing data collection out in the field. So that would be with someone like Game and Wildlife. The company I worked for in West Sacramento is a private company that does. So try to start from the beginning of how a company like that works, which is if there's a development around a river in California and all over the country, but California has a pretty their own unique, rigorous kind of standards for environmental control and management. So if there is some sort of development, like building an apartment complex next to a river, the developer is required to create a report on how their building is going to impact the local environment. So they would hire a company to come in and collect data on the population of the fish, on the different maybe pH level of that river, the average temperature, average water flow of that river, how many different fish species are in that river. They're required to do that study beforehand so that there is some sort of idea of how populations or the health of the environment is affected after development. So I would go in and do those studies for a developer. There's also a lot of government programs. Unfortunately, those government programs aren't quite seen as much money as they should at the moment. So working for an environmental agency for the government is a little tough, because sometimes it can be the best way to make an impact, but also it's a very, funding really fluctuates depending on who's in charge. So that one's kind of a hard one to time, because you could be, sometimes there's no jobs for it, sometimes there's a lot of jobs for it, stuff like that. So yeah, there's also hatcheries. A lot of people who studied what I studied work for fish hatcheries. They work in engineering so that they can improve river conditions and help fish populations. So there's really a whole range of stuff. But I like being out in the field. I like having my feet in the water and getting up close and sampling fish right there in the water.
Are there ever do you ever find like any sort of if you were exploring and you're doing some of that kind of work, or as you had done that type of work as a student and that kind of thing, have you ever identified or felt like there were certain gaps or inefficiencies in the way that some of those things are done, where you found yourself thinking oh man, I should do my own consulting business, or I should start my own company, because you could do it this way and it could be more impactful, or it'd be less volatile in terms of the dependency on the government funding and
Yep.
So you've thought about that kind of thing, about maybe finding a way to even just carve out your own niche?
I think about it all the time. Unfortunately, I think I'm still a bit too young and inexperienced to have a clear answer on how I would do that. But I've certainly identified the inefficiencies. I have yet to identify the solution.
Right.
And I'm hoping. I mean, that's something I think about all the time, and I hope that it comes to me one day so that I can get busy to it. But it's a very complex, very it's everything's tied up with something else. There's so many conflicting interests when it comes to the environment, and you know, really trying to make everyone happy with as many conflicting interests there are is not an easy task, and it takes it's going to take a very, very creative solution with some people that are very, very committed, and I really hope to be a part of that one day. I think I'm still just
well, that's where tour managing,
a few books and a few more years away from
tour managing might prepare you for that sort of thing, because
Sure.
you know, I mean, it'd be different with a band like Skating Polly because they're like literally all family and they have like a certain kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
It's probably not as good of a training ground for that. Whereas there's other times where you are touring with other bands as a tour manager, and like you are literally trying to please all of these people in different camps who all have very different agendas, even though they're supposed to be in the same band. Like a lot of times you'll find that people are not on the same page, and like and like learning tour managing on that side of things can be like sort of like prepare you for what you're talking about, where you're trying to like navigate all these different government agencies and all these people with different interests and different goals. And it's like, oh yeah, I've definitely seen that from the tour managing standpoint.
Absolutely.
There's actually parts of that would be analogous and be pretty directly translatable, you know. Tell us about truck stop food. You just got some Pilot truck stop burritos.
Absolutely.
And I'm rocking the nectar of the gods, the Diet Mountain Dew.
And I love the French vanilla cappuccinos that you can press a button and push out.
Yeah, a lot of the truck stops have pretty good coffee selections.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, who needs it more than the truckers, you know?
I know.
Thank God they're getting the good stuff. Man, I'm happy to eat at truck stops. I think they got everything you need. They got everything you need. Some are better than others, but they'll get you to where you need to go. They'll get you. There's some really special ones too. Have you ever stopped at Sequential in Eugene?
No.
It's right off the 5, and it's they actually do like biofuel.
Okay.
They do regular gasoline, but they also do biofuel, and they inside their stop they just have a really great little cafe for super tasty sandwiches, super great coffee drinks, super great pastries. So there's some special ones out there. Like Sequential is a must stop every time we go, but you can't go wrong with your Loves. Either your Pilot, your Maverick.
Yeah. Pilot Flying J has always been a pretty consistent one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mavericks are good. TA truck stops are good. Petro truck stops are good. I'm trying to think of what some of the other regional ones are. It's just been so long since I've like done, you know, like actual traveling around the country, because I'm kind of confined to going up and down the West Coast, because that's all I have time for with Roadies and Rescues, because I'm usually trying to do trips where I can go one day up and one day back.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of those things where, again, like depending on what level you're touring at, you know, it certainly helps if you're like, if you're easy to please with like whatever the selections of food are, you know, like whatever selections of food are kind of in front of you at any given time, because it's not like, you know, if you're a really big famous band and you're getting all these like, you know, you have catering that travels with you on the tour and all that kind of stuff, and you know, that could be a pretty great thing. But for the reality of most touring musicians and touring crew people, you know, you're doing things at a level where the schedules are hectic enough each day that you're just trying to grab a meal where you can, when you can, and sometimes you can't be a prima donna about it. You can't be too picky.
No, you cannot.
You're not always going to have a Whole Foods market to go get all organic everything. You know?
There's I forget what town it is, but there's a gas station in Oregon, and the band always makes fun of me because I get shrimp. I get shrimp at that gas station because I think they got some really tasty coconut shrimp, and they're like, "Why are you eating gas station shrimp?" But they don't know that it's really good. They don't know.
As long as you're not too far from one of the coasts, then the seafood can be trusted. But you don't want to be eating oysters if you're like in the Midwest.
No, I would not get gas station shrimp in Indiana. Would not be my place.
Gas station crawdads or something. Oh man, but yeah, that's another whole tricky layer to the roadie lifestyle is, how do you navigate trying to eat reasonably healthy? Of course, there's sort of like cliches about how when people are feeling more indestructible when you're younger, you can get away with eating a lot of things that like a 50-year-old isn't really going to be able to get away with eating, without like really, really paying a price for it, There's that's definitely like, there's some truth to that for sure. And that's, but again, it's one of those things that like most people, they don't really have an insight or a window into the world of people who tour for a living with bands and stuff and know like what what the sort of challenges happen to be, I think to stay healthy, especially because sleep deprivation is such an inherent component to touring that even when you have like a decent routing on a tour, it's like you're still like napping in the van sometimes, and it's not really very good quality sleep, and occasionally you have to pull that one crazy overnight drive to make it to that huge festival the next day that wasn't really in the tour routing originally, but the offer came in at the last minute. It's like you get thrown some real curveballs, and it just seems like the sleep deprivation thing is really just par for the course. Even when I was like, with all the touring I did in the final years as a front of house engineer, where it's like touring with bands like on a bus and everything, where everybody has like a bunk they can sleep in. I mean, that certainly helps, but like sometimes you're in the bunk that's right above the generator compartment and it's super loud, and there's just a bunch of other things too, where like if you've got like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people all in a bus, it's like, you might want to take a nap, but there might be other people who are like coming and going and in and out of the hallway, and there's always like noises and distractions, and so it's hard to get like a really good quality of like deep sleep, and it catches up with you after a while, It's navigating health or remaining healthy on the road it's actually way more difficult. Absolutely. I don't know what your experience.
Oh no, for sure.
With that.
I mean, my big issue is, like you said, I still got enough youth in me to be able to handle some of the less desirable food options. But I grew too tall and I didn't build enough muscle to support it, so I got big back problems. And if I don't walk like 2 miles every day, I'm just going to be in pain, and pretty hard to walk 2 miles every day when you're on the road. So,
well, if you have back issues, is it like, I would think that like doing something like merch, where like for me though, if I stand still for too long, that hurts my back. And so for me, like if I'm like standing behind the merch table or something like that, even just standing at a front of house console or whatever for a while. And sometimes like you're standing like on concrete. Yeah. And that like actually just like that can be hell on your back.
Yeah. I've gotten very unapologetic about my when and where I stretch. I just start stretching wherever I am. I'll be talking to someone and I'll just say, sorry, we gotta pause. I gotta hit a stretch real quick. I gotta
Yeah.
do my leans and my stretches. I mean, I cannot function without just, yeah, I'm a stretching all the time.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm on a really long drive and I'm like, if I'm getting tired and I'm kind of like, okay, I got to like stay alert, stay awake. And it's like, there's only so much caffeine I can do before I'll start having heart palpitations,
Yeah.
I got a certain, bag of tricks of like nicotine gum and
Sure.
things like that'll get me through in a pinch. Like, okay, that'll carry me for like another 30 minutes or whatever. There's like certain vitamins and, you could take like niacin and things that'll like make your skin like flush and prickly. It's like, it's the worst feeling. Like it's like completely unpleasant, but it definitely wakes you up because like your face gets all flushed with, it's a really like irritating feeling, but it wakes you up.
Yeah.
There's only so many of those things you can do, and then every once in a while, like it's like, okay, it's like 3 a.m. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm just gonna pull off on an exit. I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna go sit ass to grass, like in a deep squat, and I'm just gonna hold it for like 5 minutes, and I'm just gonna sit there, and it totally stretches like my like my hips and my lower back and everything. And then when I go to stand up from it, I'm kind of like, whoa, like you get a little bit of a like, oh, okay, hold on, I got to steady myself for a second. But then I'm like, oh, okay, like I feel loose again, but like that's, for me, just sitting in a really deep squat is one of the ways that I'll stretch.
That's good.
And I really have to like keep myself conditioned by just doing that, like when I go to the gym a couple times a week and then at other random times during the week, because it actually really helps when I'm setting up microphones on the stage. I'm kneeling down next to a drum kit or in front of amplifiers. I'm positioning stuff. It really helps to have that conditioning of like, I can just sit all the way down at my heels in a squat for 5 minutes and like not have it not be like a problem,
Yeah.
So yeah, the stretching for your back is it's like really like a must.
Yeah, that's my biggest health concern on tour, for sure. But everyone has their own. I mean, I literally think everyone in our van has like a different health concern. It's like, I don't do well without enough exercise. Kelly doesn't do well without enough sleep. Curtis doesn't do well if he doesn't have a proper diet. Peyton doesn't do well if I don't know. She's pretty indestructible actually. She's pretty good. She can handle most things. But we all have our own different thing that we need to check, or else we're gonna be in bad shape. So
yeah. Well, and it's always going to be that thing where you've had a previous scare. You know what I mean? Like maybe like if you've ever, for anyone who's ever like endured like real like serious back pain.
Yeah.
That it's like it puts a scare into you that makes you go, man, I got to do whatever I can to like circumvent, like,
absolutely,
or find some way to prevent this from ever coming back or whatever. And yeah, it's it really is one of the great challenges though, is that like being comfortable and being healthy on the road. And it's so cool that like there's organizations now like the Roadie Clinic out in the Detroit area who create a lot of content, and they partner with other people that are like, not only like people that are like psychologists and therapists and stuff, but also people that are like teach yoga, teach fitness, and teach nutrition and stuff. And like they're doing a lot of really great educational stuff and putting out good content on social media, so that all the new people that are coming into the business, like the sooner people learn, hey, this isn't just a big party. The sooner you learn that, like, well, the more, the greater the likelihood that you'll actually get invited back and you'll get to keep working, and people will want to have you on tour because you're not just like, getting fucked up all the time and like, trying to get laid and all, just all the sort of dumb stereotypes or tropes that go along with like crewing for like a band or a touring artist.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sooner that people get a handle on that and get a grasp on it, then they can start building longevity into their career.
Absolutely.
You got to be very intentional about it, because if you're not intentional about it, you can get away with like a certain amount of sleep deprivation and being a little bit too recreational with some of your substances and stuff like that. But then at some point the bottom falls out.
Sure.
And then you're like, and that can be the sort of thing that like gets you canned from a tour, gets you fired, gets you sent home or whatever, or lands you in the hospital or whatever. I randomly once got food poisoning on like literally the first day of a tour. And it was when Rogue Wave was out touring with Death Cab for Cutie, and I won't go into any of the details because it was so savage. It was like one of the most brutal things that my body has ever been put through.
Oh man!
But I got food poisoning, and I was just like, on the second day of the tour. Thankfully, the bus only had to drive like 4 or 5 hours that day, and when I got there, we got to the venue pretty early, and the tour manager put me in a cab and sent me to one of those like walk-in clinics, and like they had to drip like 2 bags of saline into my arm because I was so dehydrated from all the vomiting and diarrhea from the previous 24 hours, and like they weighed me and I had lost like 12 pounds in 24 hours or something. It was bad. It was really bad, and that was a horrible way to start a tour because it was kind of like, oh man, am I gonna get fired? Are they gonna send me home? And it was like I could just keep it together enough to get through the sound checks and mix the show, and for a couple of days it was just like, as soon as like my main work responsibilities are done, I just like crawl back to my bunk, and it was just horrible. And like once something like that happens, you're like, man, I gotta be super careful, and like I just can't ever get that sick again. I'm like so lucky that I didn't just get sent home and like a replacement brought in. I was like really, really sick.
Yeah,
it was messed up.
There's all the little things that help, make you feel better and stay healthy. But yeah, I think someone on whenever we do a tour, at least one person gets sick every time, because you're going to venue after venue, city after city, crowds of people after crowds of people, and then sitting in a contained vehicle for all your other time, and it's
sharing a dressing room maybe with other people.
You're gonna it's floating around,
Yeah, you might as well be like a teacher at a daycare center, because there's just going to be germs everywhere. It's just like, the little kids picking their noses and whatever, and like, being on tour is like a constant like, petri dish.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough job to do when you're sick, and it's very easy to get sick. So
yeah, and plus you don't want to be sick either, because then if you're the first person who gets sick, and then other people get sick, they're going to be totally resentful. They're going to be like, so-and-so brought the flu or whatever, and so-and-so got us all sick.
It's funny. I feel like I've been lucky enough to have kind of the exact opposite experience most of the time, where someone will be really sick, and then later everyone else will get sick, and then those people pretend like they have no idea where they caught it from. Like, I don't know if they're just being polite or if they're stupid, but it does make everyone feel, because I think you got to understand that it's just going to happen.
Yeah, so talking about all the health stuff too, that brings us to the kind of the one of the things that kind of drives the mission of Roadies and Rescues actually is to have these conversations about like mental health stuff,
Yeah.
Another sort of thing that's like a topic that probably doesn't get enough consideration as far as people who like tour for a living and like are on the road and that sort of thing. What kind of observations have you made about, like, we were talking about like different things that like, different people have different regimens to try and stay healthy on the road and that sort of thing. But, have you found like in your touring for the last few years with Skating Poly, like, is there any particular mental health regimens that people have like deliberately like incorporated?
That's a good question. I would say probably the number one thing that we're intentionally doing to keep our mental health in check is to keep our physical health in check. I feel like once illness sets in, once sleep deprivation sets in, that's when you start experiencing the like some mental fragility, some mental problems, and just that sometimes, yeah, it could just be, I don't want to say a mood killer because it's a bit more than that, but yeah, it could be a real struggle if we're dealing with, pretty much we're just trying to minimize our stress and maximize our health so that our brains and minds are functioning well. That's the number one thing I say we're intentionally doing. Also, as is this kind of the stereotype, as you mentioned earlier, there is like, you know, there's a lot of opportunities for partying and substances that Skating Polly and myself have done a really good job of having a lot of fun, staying loose, but not relying on those things because, you know, heavily relying on the partying and and substances for sure can be the quickest way to put the mental health of the van in whack. So we try to keep those things in check as much as possible. We very often use all the drink tickets that were allocated, and you know, we don't do anything crazy. So that's another big one that can be really hard to avoid because there is kind of this underlying culture and idea that that's what you're supposed to do as a band, or that's how you're supposed to get through life on the road. But we just love being on the road and we love playing our shows, so we lean into that rather than other things, and that really I think protects us from a lot of mental health issues on the road for sure. There's one thing that happens every time, and it is pretty unavoidable, and I still have not perfected a way around it. But there's definitely like a post-tour depression that happens.
Oh yeah.
Like,
that's in every conversation.
Yeah,
believe me.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the weeks leading up to tour, it's like you can't pick. You're so excited, you just want to get out there as soon as possible, and then there's this like middle of tour to late tour feeling of like, I can't wait to get home, and then once you get home, there's this feeling of like, oh, what am I doing right now? And man, I just had so much fun, and that was such a special experience, and now it's over, and I got to go back to not doing that. I got to, you know, there's, at least for me, there's something very satisfying about getting up and moving to the next place, doing something, getting up and moving to the next place. It's like you got a job ahead of you, and then you're doing a job, and then you're immediately on to the next job, and you know that, and it's a lot of fun. So, you know, it's just a very satisfying feeling. And then when that's all over, it's a real emptiness that you feel, and a real lost feeling you get. So like I said, I haven't quite perfected that. I try to just like physically exert myself as much as I can when I get home to try to sleep through the first few days of the post-tour depression. That's been my strategy, but yeah, like I said, still have not perfected that.
Yeah, well, and that's a phrase that I've used for decades as well, is
Yeah.
the post-tour depression, is
Yeah.
the exact phrase. And it is a real thing, and that's another, like, literally one of the motivating, driving factors of why I wanted to create Roadies and Rescues, as not just so that I have, like, because I was already becoming involved in the world of dog rescue when the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
but the idea was that although this wouldn't solve people's problems with regard to the anxiety of coming home and like the jarring thing of like suddenly you're ripped away from your road family, like it's your relationship to Skating Polly, who you've been touring with for the last few years, is different, and you're still around everybody like on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, I live with Kelly.
And they are literally all family members.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, but there is still there still is like an abruptness to the ending of that series of set of goals of like every day, like we have to go this distance and like put on this great show for these fans who've been waiting for this show for a long time. And there's a whole like there's like like you said, like you have these every day you're like on to the next goal, and then one day it just like sort of stops, and then a lot of people come home and they have anxiety about like, okay, well, what should I do? Should I go back to my venue gig for a few weeks before the next tour, or should I try and find a temp job, or do I just try and like coast and just chill on the money that I just made from this tour? But then as soon as the next tour starts, I'm going to kind of broke again. And like, everyone's trying to figure out a different way to navigate like the time at home before the next tour starts. And there really is like a heavy thing that lands on you after a tour, because every tour, even when it's with bands you already know and it's the same crew that you already know and everything, every single individual tour is this like accelerated, compartmentalized personal growth spurt that everyone goes through. And you never come back from a tour the same person.
No.
You literally, you can go out for 3 weeks and you come back with some different insight about things, and you're a different person. And it's that kind of stop and go lifestyle is really hard. And one part of the impetus for creating Roadies and Rescues was to say, like, if anyone was built to do what I've been doing for the last 5.5 years of driving dogs all over the country and like trying to save these animals from euthanasia, if anyone was built to do this, Roadies are the perfect people to do this, right? It's like there's a very transferable skill set there, and if they're home between tours and they're available, this just gives them one more thing to pull them out of bed and give them something to look forward to. That maybe 1 or 2 days a week they can go and find a volunteer opportunity to transport some dogs or something, and Roadies and Rescues will help cover the expense. Or I can fly them out in between tours and bring them to Northern California and have them go on a trip with me and experience it firsthand. Because there's a lot of roadies and people who've come through Bottom of the Hill, and I've told them about what I'm doing, and they're like, they follow me on Facebook or Instagram, and they're like, shit, this is really cool, this is rad. But it's not until they come and they go on a trip and they like really see it firsthand and they understand the impact that they're like, oh my god, this is incredible. Like, I just had a hand in saving the lives of like 32 animals that were literally going to be killed if we didn't get in the van and do this trip. And so the idea was, my friend Ron is the one who, I'd never heard anyone say this, is so perfect, because I immediately knew what he said, but he was like referring to bed rot. And he's like, you come home and you start like, you're suffering from like bed rot, or you're bed rotting for like 2 weeks after a tour, because you're just like, you're kind of jacked up physically from all the sleep deprivation, and you're just sort of like, and you're just like in a weird headspace, and you're like vacillating between being like anxious and depressed and like trying to figure out what to do. And what Roadies and Rescues does, it can't solve that, but it can definitely interrupt the pattern. Just temporarily, it can interrupt the pattern. And I think that people are, as they're starting to like, as these conversations are going to start going out on YouTube and people are going to hear this, and crew people are going to say, oh, what's this all about? Maybe I'll listen to this guy's interview or whatever, trying to understand what this whole operation is. Then I'm hoping that that's where it clicks and they go, oh yeah, like this is something that will really give you something to look forward to for those weeks in between tours. So it's baked into, like, mental health is baked into what we're doing. And then my friend Marcel, a couple years ago, he told me about he's like, well, dude, do you know about the Roadie Clinic, right? And I was like, no, what's the Roadie Clinic? And he like told me all about it. He's like, dude, you got to fucking follow these people. Like they're doing industry changing work. Like what they're doing is like super cool, like with their social media content and all the stuff that they're putting together and all the the mental health resources and stuff for people staying sober on the road and all kinds of incredible stuff. So of course I looked them up. I ended up having a conversation with them about partnering with them at some point, because like there's definitely some overlap in our missions, because both of our missions are in some way predicated on the mental health of touring professionals.
Absolutely.
Is baked into like what each of us do, but through totally different avenues.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool and kind of neat. Like they've got their own like really awesome like unique angle of how they're like addressing these things. So super cool. Like shout out to them because they're like really awesome people. And they're like it's like a husband and wife team who they've been in the touring industry since like the early 90s or something. And like they've been at it forever, and like they're like high level tour managing and super high level like arena stadium touring people. Super cool.
That is really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah,
I'll have to check that out.
I'd like to get this to the point where when we were all down at Ohana Festival for Skating Poly. When we were all down there together, when we left, I told Julia, I was like, going into 2026 and all these plans I have, and like finally getting the YouTube channel going and getting people like you involved and other friends of mine out on some of these trips, I was like, I really want 2026 to be our breakout year. And I was like, my hope is that a year from now that we're back at this festival again with Skating Poly or like another festival or somebody else, but we're running a table backstage in the backstage area, like next to the catering or something. And maybe we even partner with a local rescue to bring in some dogs. Yeah, and we have an area where people can go decompress and chill with some dogs or cats, have our own trailer. Get back in the artist trailer area, where people can come and like just chill and decompress with some animals,
Well,
it's, mental health, man, it's all baked in.
Well, that's definitely another thing that helps with the post-tour depression. For me and Kelly have a dog, and Peyton has a dog, and I mean that's like on top of our list is we want to go home and see our buddies, and when we go home and see our buddies, that helps a lot. So, the rescuing the dogs is great. Having a buddy of my own to come home to also helps quite a bit too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, sure. And unconditional love and the whole thing, and pets are amazing. Whether it's whether you've got a cat or a dog or a pet rat or whatever, like it's and that's another thing too. That it's like, like there will be future conversations that I'll have with other roadies who they have kids. And they have families that they have to leave for months at a time.
For sure.
And they're missing part of their kids growing up. And that's a whole wild conversation unto itself. And so for those of us who don't have kids of our own, but we have like the fur kids, as people the fur babies or whatever, then it's like, it's like that's hard. Like you're taken away from this, like really important, animal or pet or however you want to phrase it, that's like an important part of your life, and they're like your companion, they're your best friend, and then you want to come home and reconnect and everything. But even when you have that, it's like that's really only coming back and having a loving pet in a relationship like that. It's still just one tool in a toolbox that we want to help people like build out, so that you have like the tools of the roadie clinic, and you have roadies and rescues, and you have your own pets, and you have your own family, and you have like enough resources that you don't have to try and lean too heavily on any one of them or expect any one of them to fix the anxiety and the depression of the things that land on you so hard when you come home. But it's a real thing, and it's always going to be, the mental health component will always be one of the things that will always be integral to these conversations and these interviews, because it's something that I want people who are animal enthusiasts who want to know more about what we do, who are learning about the concert industry, I want them to learn some kind of insights and go, oh, I never would have thought about that aspect of the lifestyle, because it's a total lifestyle. Totally. And then I also want it to be so that new people who are coming into the industry are not unprepared. and they hear over and over from veteran touring people, they go, oh, like, I never really thought about that, and I'm getting ready to go out on my first tour. I need to be prepared for how intense it's going to be and how intense it's going to be to come home.
Yeah.
You know? So I appreciate, like, you know, the insights, and I appreciate the candor, you know, and it's always like very affirming too to have someone else be able to start the conversation on their own with a phrase like post-tour depression, and be like, yeah, dude, like that's literally been in all my previous conversations. Like, it's like that is very much 100% a real thing. It's nothing. It's not like anything that's exclusive or wrong with you.
No,
like that's a fucking thing.
It's a real phenomenon. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so usually what I've been doing is I've been closing out a lot of these interviews. Especially now that the light's waning, and we've probably got like about an hour and a half worth of cool material to edit and, you know, put together like a good interview. A guy named Will that he had come through Bottom of the Hill a long time. I haven't seen this guy since 2010 or something. Will Pepple, and he was the TM in front of house for this really great band called Murder by Death. Used to come through Bottom of the Hill pretty regularly, circa 2000. I want to say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or that era. At any rate, I ran into him at a festival one time at the House of Blues in Boston, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years, and we were talking, and he said to me just something that just immediately clicked with me and made me like raise my hand in affirmation. But he said, you know, man, he's like, the longer I've been touring, he said, I'm convinced that everybody who tours for a living is running from something. And I was like, fucking A, brother. I was like, raise my hand.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's always been stuck in my head, especially like as I've, over the years, like I kind of wrapped up my own touring career. I've had my own mental health issues to deal with regard to touring. And then like a year and a half of really, really intense depression when I retired from touring.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I'm not touring, if I'm not this front of house guy, like who the fuck am I? Like, identity crisis kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
So it's that ever since he said that, it's always been in the back of my mind, even though I've been off the road for almost 15 years. Yeah. And what I've been asking people at the end of these interviews is the idea that everybody who tours for a living is running from something. If there were any truth to that, what are you running from?
What am I running from? That's a great question. And I have an answer. What I think I'm running from is, as I've said before, you know, my interest, I went to school for environmental science. I have a real passion and love for our environment and our planet and for the fish. And I've experienced, through my studies and through my time and just through all of it, I've just experienced a lot of disappointment and what's the opposite of optimism? Pessimism.
Like pessimism, yeah.
And just fear that our planet is hurting, and that even though I went to school and I studied and I care very much, that ultimately I am going to have a very hard time saving the planet. I think that's people that, because I think people who study environmental science, there's kind of this narcissism that they all start with, which is, I'm going to save the planet. I'm going to make the world healthy again. I'm going to make the rivers flow again. I'm going to make the fish come back to their homeland. And every year the numbers seem to be getting worse, and the condition seems to be getting worse. And I feel like I am running from being a part of it. I don't want to commit my life to it, and then at my deathbed, all the fish I fought for are now extinct, and I don't want to be a part of something that might fail at the end and have terrible consequences.
Well, I think to a certain degree, like that, not to psychoanalyze you, because
Yeah.
might be kind of unfair, but like, sometimes like people get avoidant about a certain depth of relationships because they don't want to have their heart broken again.
Yeah.
And that's my first thought is like when you mention that is it's kind of like, and I'm not saying that as a criticism in any way. I'm just saying like purely as
Yeah.
like as an observation of like what crossed my mind, is like, yeah, it's like, and I don't even know. I mean, you would know because you know people who went to school to study the environmental sciences and all stuff. And, like for me, I don't know if it's like a truly like a narcissism thing of like trying to thinking that they're going to go in and
Right.
save the world, so much as it might just be like a certain naivete,
Yeah, right.
Yeah. As opposed to like a self-centered like it all revolves around me and I'm
Yes,
like a
I think-
superhero and
yeah.
I'm great kind of thing,
You're right. I think you're
but
right.
but I think that but it what concerns me about that is sort of like just that feeling of that hesitation of like you don't want to be like in for this massive disappointment and heartbreak
Yeah.
or whatever, but it's also then then you got to think about like I don't know all the fucking Shakespeare quotes or whatever
Right.
about like how like like at some point it's better to have like or not, it's not even Shakespeare, but it's like like people say like all these things about these romantic quotes that have endured for centuries and they seem like cliches, but there's things about like you still got to put yourself out there because it's better to like try and whatever and fail at it or whatever, and at least experience like certain things rather than just to have like, never have tried at all or whatever. So it's like there's still always, and the good thing is that like because of like, it's also important to understand too that with how fickle the music business is and how fast and fleeting it is and like things can just disappear overnight. Like a band can be wildly successful 1 minute and a year later they've completely imploded.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good to recognize that like you've got this golden opportunity right now and that like every day you should like kind of treasure it and like be grateful for it. Like I get to like travel the world and do all this rad shit with people that I love and like who are being creative and like I love their creativity and I love being in their orbit and everything. And then, because it could all go away like on a moment's notice, and then you can always get back into the environmental science stuff. You can always go full tilt into that later on.
Yep.
If this is no longer interesting or viable, or it stops growing you, it stops being a good learning experience or whatever. It's like you get as much as you can from it now, and then you can always and then who knows? Maybe after a certain amount of time, like maybe something in what you're doing now actually kind of galvanizes you and it sort of reinforces you and goes, you know what, like like I am ready to like go back into that world and like really like and like and try and like figure something out, but so it's interesting because it's like like you're saying like you're kind of running from heartbreak. Like you don't want that thing that means so much to you to not work out.
Yeah.
And that's and the thing is not everyone has an answer for that question.
Yeah.
Like if I throw that at them, it's like sometimes people are kind of like, oh man, like I'm gonna have to like ponder that and think about it, because they're like, I don't know, like
I think my answer is very clear. I think that I knew where you were going with that question and I knew what my answer was going to be for sure. And I definitely want to, I do want to say, even though sometimes I feel very pessimistic, I am an optimist. I just, no matter what I do, I think there's just no way to get that out of me. And I definitely haven't given up, is what I'm saying,
Yeah, you're like cautiously optimistic.
Yes, I haven't given up, and I just want to do the best job that I can when I can, and and I love being on the road, I so much, but every time I get in that van, I start the road, I definitely think to myself, I don't have to. I'm looking forward to not having to think about what I'm going to do for my environmental career,
Yeah.
And I don't have to think about where I'm going to move to and what my job is going to be for that and how much of an impact can I really make? I don't have to think about that stuff on the road. And those are the feelings I'm running for. It's not, I haven't given up, but
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
I'm very happy to put those thoughts in the back of my head and get behind a van and drive across the country.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too that I've talked about with other people that's related to that is the idea that like sometimes in life, like you're running away from something and sometimes you're running towards something.
Yeah.
And so like right now, like that's a thing that is a passion for you, and you're not necessarily running towards it right now, but you always can.
Yeah.
You know, and better to at least know that like you have this other thing, you have this other world outside of this one and outside of touring that like is another direction that you can take your life in, because you'd be equally enthusiastic and fascinated by it,
Yeah.
and like, you know, and ready to tackle it and really go after it. There's a lot of people in the touring world who just perpetually keep touring because they don't have anything else.
Yeah.
And that's a really unsafe place to be.
Yes.
You know, that's
For
a
sure.
really unsafe place to be. And that's where, again, like, maybe there'll be like one person I'll encounter over the years who like, they get turned on to something like this. And maybe it's not even like saving shelter animals, but maybe they learn something from this and they go, man, like I've always thought about like that I should be volunteering at my local soup kitchen. And this is like the thing that gets them off the fence. Because they go, holy shit, like if this knucklehead can like do something like this that's actually making a difference and it's like impactful, you know, then they go like, damn, like, yeah, I could do something too. Like I'm really hoping that in some way people can get inspired by these conversations that we're having and realize like, hey, like you're not alone. Like we all have these thoughts. We all go through these phases. We all go through these like dilemmas about our career and our interests and stuff and whatever. And like, and at some point, like, we all just genuinely want to help each other succeed, and we want to help you find that thing where you're like, okay, I'm kind of done like running from this other stuff in my past or in my life or whatever, and like now I've got something I want to run towards, you know. So
and like I said earlier, the beautiful thing about the world of environmental studies is I truly believe everything is useful for it, no matter how unrelated it seems. Is that it's a super interdisciplinary field, so every single thing can be applied to it, and so that is something that keeps me hopeful too. Is that even if I'm not fully immersed in that world and making the fullest impact that I can at that moment, every day is making me wiser and more ready for that when it comes. And I do believe that fully, and that helps. That helps for sure.
Yeah, totally. Touring is such an accelerator and like an incubator for a lot of other insights and skills that you can definitely like take and transfer elsewhere.
Yeah.
For sure. That's cool. Yeah, well, that's great. Thanks for that answer. I appreciate the candor and the insight and the wisdom and everything, because ultimately, you know, we want to get this stuff out there and have it be helpful to other people.
Yeah.
You know?
It was helpful to me just talking about it, you know?
Yeah, it gives you, like I said, I've been thinking about that ever since you said that in like 2010. I'm like, it's like, that totally makes sense. And, you know, so I feel like it's a good one to kind of end things on. But and now that the light is waning, it's actually, the cameras look okay.
It's kind of that golden hour kind of thing where it is.
Yeah, it's kind of gives it a different color quality. But it hasn't like gotten all blown out and grainy yet. But all right, cool. Well, with that, I'm going to hit the slate button again to end it.